Avinnash, ITC, health disclosure obviously for those preferring the stock, but massive underperformance. I mean, 8% down on a YTD basis when HUL's up 8% and 77% up for Britannia and Marico. I would ask the reverse questions. Do the valuations look screamingly attractive now?
No, I think, Anu, frankly, if you ask me from a fundamental perspective, cigarettes still contribute a significant part of the top line and the profits. And if there is a regulatory issue, I think everyone is aware that loose cigarette sales form a major chunk of revenues.
Yeah.
So clearly that could be a direct hit. And we have seen already last 2-3 quarters, volume growth has been quite disappointing. Excise duty on cigarettes last budget was increased significantly. So, we don't know in the coming budget also Mr. Jaitley could possibly tax the cigarette sector again. So my guess is I think clearly the headwinds are not very favorable for ITC, and I think clearly in terms of this kind of environment, to give it a significantly higher P multiple and talk about better earnings growth, I mean these two critical variables look to be quite weak. So probably you could see some more weakness, and if the Q2 is not up to expectations, I think the markets would give it a further thumbs down. So I would not be surprised, the choices which you mentioned, a Britannia or maybe a Dabur or maybe a Bajaj Corp, these companies have got products where there are hardly any regulatory issues, and pricing obviously is competitive, but at least on the regulatory side, they are free of these things. So my guess is I think for some time ITC would underperform, and I think the kind of fall you have seen, Q2 is a number, is a profit number which I would closely monitor in case the market is disappointed by the earnings growth and again the volume growth becoming negative. I think you could see further downside.
And that could be a big worry. I had originally wanted to ask you more on metals because you got Tata Steel up today, Vedanta up in trade. But I want to talk to you about technology because you talked about Infosys, being the Kickstarter, but HCL Tech saw a good rebound in trade. Has the worst been priced in? Because this is a stock that's slightly underperformed as well. This TCS, which has underperformed in the last 3 months as well. How would you play the tech back? If you put in a bet tomorrow for a Monday trade, how would you review it?
I would prefer to bet first on TCS, second on Infosys, and third on HCL Tech. The reason being is HCL Tech has already given a profit warning guidance. The top line would be tepid, the profitability would be tepid. So if in case, the EBITDA margins further contract for HCL Tech, which looks like to be happen, then I think it's going to be a disappointment because last quarter also we saw a 500 basis cut on the EBITDA margin side. Talking about TCS, I think it's one of the best performers in the sector, and I think if you talk about order book visibility, the kind of profitability which is expected, I would prefer to remain invested in TCS for the simple reason that visibility is strong. And as far as Infosys is concerned, I think again if you talk about Infosys valuation vis-a-vis a TCS or maybe a Tech Mahindra or typically a HCL Tech, I think clearly we have seen good numbers pan out in the last 1 or 2 quarters. The management is now talking about going using the Digital India pitch. Clearly if they do maintain the earnings guidance of 12 to 15%, I would not be surprised the markets would take it positively because clearly the kind of cross currency pressure which HCL Tech has clearly mentioned has not been put out by Infosys. So probably we could see a good positive surprise, but I think the markets would look at the guidance number very closely.
What about Tech Mahindra? Massive outperformance.
Yeah.
So would you say that the best is already priced in?
I would be a little skeptical on Tech Mahindra for the simple reason that their exposure on the telecom vertical is still very large, and the kind of acquisitions they have made. I won't be surprised that like last quarter, as the management mentioned that it's a long-term call, probably margin improvement still would take some time. So I would not be saying that in the longer term Tech Mahindra would not do well, but the coming quarter is going to be very challenging, and probably some sort of price outperformance has already happened. So to that extent, I think Infosys at around 1130, 1140. Today the stock was little weak. I would presume that it could be a good entry point when the numbers actually come out on Monday.
Okay.